What's up, everybody? I don't even know what to do with myself right now because today I am telling you why you should read the Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown. My favorite trilogy. The first book is my favorite book. My favorite character is in here. So there are 6 books out in this storyline, sort of. But it's split up into 2 trilogies within that saga. So today I'm going to be talking about the first trilogy because book 1 of the second half is arriving today in my mailbox. So nobody bother me for the next 2 days. I'm going to jump right in. This book caught my eye. I don't think anybody even recommended this book. I just read the synopsis for this and was hooked. Absolutely hooked. So let me just read this to you in case you have not heard yet. Book 1, Red Rising. This says, his wife taken, his people enslaved. Driven by a longing for justice and the memory of lost love, Darrow will stop at nothing to bring down his enemies, even if he must become one of them to do so. So there's that. But then if you look at the little blurb on Amazon or anywhere else, basically society is divided into a system of colors, and whatever color you are, your people pretty much just exists to do whatever job is associated with your color. So golds are the highest, reds are the lowest. Our main character, Darrow, is a red. Darrow is what you call a helldiver. So the reds, most of the men are helldivers. They are digging on Mars, supposedly to prepare Mars for civilization so that people can come live there safely. So this whole group of people is under the impression that they're doing this selfless act of service for the rest of the population so they can have a safe place to live. But this job kills people. Like, this job is extremely dangerous. This stuff is all in the blurbs, so I'm not going to be giving any spoilers here because I just wouldn't do that to you. But basically, Darrow finds out civilization has been on Mars. It's been there. It has been thriving. There are people that have been living in luxury. So the Reds are just being kept in the dark, basically as slaves, doing the dirty work. Like, they don't even live on the surface of Mars, the Reds. They're just in tunnels. They're just in tunnels all day, every day. It's not a good way to live, but they all think they're making this sacrifice. So when Darrow finds out that life has been happening, leaving the Reds behind, he wants to do something about it, and he tries to infiltrate the Golds, who are at the top. Like, they are so rich and so bougie. That is the very short summary of what this book is about, and the storyline just continues from there throughout the other 2 books. But it's all still centered around that same thing. Like, this trilogy is about trying to make a change and get justice for your people, and it's an emotional roller coaster, so strap in. Why should you read this book? Aside from the fact that synopsis is epic. That synopsis is amazing. It hooked me from the beginning. I immediately ordered it, and I fell in love with this book. I have never loved a book this much. Yeah, no. One of my favorite things about this story is there are so many characters, but not in a way that is overwhelming. And they are all so good. I love so many characters in this book, and I love the villains because they are good villains. They are very good villains. There are some that you feel conflicted about, and there are some that you know are just evil to their core, and you still don't hate when you're reading scenes with them because you just appreciate how good of a villain they are. Like, Pierce Brown is amazing at character building. Before I really get into things, I do want to add, check the trigger warnings. I'm going to link a couple of different sites where you can look up trigger warnings by the book so that you can be checking for yourself. I don't trust myself to list off trigger warnings. I don't ever want to miss one. It stresses me out. But I will link some places that you can check trigger warnings for books, because unfortunately I do have a friend who I was recommending this book to, and she checked the trigger warnings, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work for her to read it. There has been some criticism on the sexual abuse that is in this book. it didn't bother me. The way it was done didn't bother me at all, but there are some people who strongly disagree with that, and they think that he should have just left it out, or that he used too much of it. So check the warnings, learn about that for yourself before you decide to read this. Like I said, I didn't mind it, but we all have our different boundaries with that, so just educate yourself before you dive into this. I truly believe that there are characters in here for everybody. I really do. And my favorite character of all time, tied with Gandalf, because I love Gandalf so much, tied with Gandalf is my other favorite character of all time in this book, and I will not tell you their name because even that to me is a spoiler when people are like, this character is so good. I'm like, well, I just don't like to know anything that's going to happen. Like, don't ruin anything for me. But what I will add is I was watching Pierce Brown at Comic-Con on YouTube, and he took a show of hands to see who everybody's favorite character is, and it was very evenly distributed, which I think is an amazing sign. My favorite character is definitely a popular favorite character, but people were all over the place, which just tells you there's a good mix. There's a lot of diversity in the characters, and it's like there's too many to remember off the top of your head, but anytime he mentions one when he's talking, I'm like, oh my god, yes, I love them too, and oh my god, yes, that was such a good character. It's just a never-ending bag of goodies, this book. Another thing that I strongly appreciate about this story is the pacing. In my opinion, this is definitely fast-paced, but it is still detailed. You know, he's not rushing through anything, but there's a lot of action. There are a lot of social dynamics. There is a lot that is going on in Darrow's head at any given moment. He's a very emotional character, which I think is really cool to see a man who is raised in a very, it's a pretty misogynistic society, yeah. But he evolves. He evolves throughout this trilogy in a big way, and it's really cool to see that, especially when he is an emotional being and it's his point of view for all three books. So it's very interesting. But I have ADD, so I can get bored fairly easily. Like, all vibes, no plot, not for me. I would rather just not read at all than read something like that. I was never for a single moment bored in this book. There was always something new that was getting me worked up, for better or for worse. Pierce Brown is not afraid of killing off characters, and he did this really cool thing where he knew he had to kill one character in the scene, and he wanted it to be sort of left to chance, as it can be in war. Like, you don't get to pick who dies in war. And he drew a name out of a hat. He put everybody in the scene on a piece of paper, put it in a hat, and he drew out of it, and he killed that character. He did it. I love that. I appreciate that a lot. And it also explains a lot. Yeah, looking back, it explains a lot. And this is another reason you should read Red Rising, because Pierce Brown is such a nerd. He is such a book nerd that he loves going into a lot of details about the characters and about his writing process and all of these things whenever he's on a panel. And gosh, it sounds like he's planning on going back and doing a lot of world building books. So in an interview, he said that he got to write some pages of a Star Wars book recently, which automatically tells you he's cool. But that also tells you how much he loves just the expansion of fantasy and sci-fi worlds. And of course, we have a lot of fantasy worlds already that we can dive into. Like, I'm very slowly over time going to be working on reading more Tolkien books, not just The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But I think it's really cool to have something that's happening now where we can read these things as they come out. Because imagine you were alive when The Lord of the Rings came out and all of the other books came out, and you were just waiting for these releases, and this world was slowly being built. It's different when it's happening in the present, and I think I feel very lucky to have found an author who will continue to release things that just add to this world that I've fallen in love with over time. That gets me very, very excited. Yet another reason to read this series is it stays good. It stays good. This does not just not a slow decline throughout the 3 books. No. The only reason that I like the first book more than the third book, the first book is when I fell in love with the characters for the first time. And this was my first book ever that I just completely fell head over heels for. Like, I never had a book that I loved that much before. So it's just got a special place in my heart, I guess. All of the books are really good. Third book is it's intense. There's so much happening. You don't know who or what to trust. You're nervous. You're scared. Straight up scared for your favorite characters because you know he's not scared of killing people. So it is a wild ride. It is a wild ride. Everybody loves Morningstar. I'm sorry. Everybody loves Morningstar. This book is absolutely epic. These books are also not super crazy long. The longest one is Morningstar, which is 400 and something pages. It's around 500 pages. But it did not feel like that because by the time you get to Morningstar, you are beyond attached. You are desperate to know what happens, and you are ready to riot. You're going to threaten to riot and just boycott Pierce Brown if he does anything too awful to any of the characters that you love, because that is how much you will fall in love with these characters. I don't think I've ever been so attached to a side character either. Like, there was a side character, this is spoiler free, don't worry. He was a large, very loud, could mess you up in battle man, who was actually super jolly in real life and has a sidekick fox who is obsessed with eating jelly beans. So you got this huge mountain of a man with this adorable little fox friend who follows him around everywhere, and he just pulls jelly beans out of nowhere and tosses them to the fox. How endearing is that? Okay, so you've got the really intense battle scenes and all of that madness, but then you also have a giant feeding a fox jelly beans. I mean, balance. It's all about the balance. The balance is there for me. Also, let me get this Hunger Games comparison out of the way. No. I'm sorry, no. I have not read... First of all, yeah, I have not read the books, and I'm never going to, because I don't really care about the movies. I watched all of them pretty much for Stanley Tucci and for the costumes. I feel like the connections people are making between them are kind of weak. I just feel like people are acting like Hunger Games has a monopoly on younger people being forced into these situations at a very young age where it is kill or be killed. And it doesn't. Sorry, it just doesn't. It happened to come out before this book, but this book, no contest. Sorry, it just doesn't. So I clearly have a lot of arguments for why I think people should read this book, but I don't know. Look at the trigger warnings. See if it is of interest, but it really is that good. It's talked about a lot. It really is that good. They're trying to work on a series adaptation for it, which I really hope that happens. This would be so good as an epic series. It needs to be a series, not a movie, which fortunately Pierce Brown agrees with. If you get into this series, you might be in for the treat of it being turned into a really epic series adaptation. If you end up reading this, please come back and let me know what you think. If you hate it, go for it. I don't understand being offended by people having different taste in books than you and by hating stories that you love and vice versa. Some people are going to think this is not a good book. I have watched reviews where people are like, it's okay. And of course, in my heart, I'm like, how dare you? But also, I don't really care. But if you do, let me know. This is one where I would really love to see all the arguments about different things in the story, because that only makes you understand the story in more detail and see it from more points of view. And that is what I love about reading. And that is what I love about BookTube. So have a good time with this if you pick it up, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Bye.